Welcome to those of you worshiping with us at home, and welcome to worship all of you here at the First Christian Church of Platte City. If those of you at home have not gathered your supplies for communion, we'd invite you to do that so you can join us in a few moments. Sorry. Our texts for the season of Lent are traditional texts that the church has celebrated for years. We've been in the Gospel of Mark most of the time since the beginning of the year. We switch over to the Gospel of John today, starting in 2nd chapter, verse 13. It was nearly time for the Jewish Passover, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. He found in the temple those who were selling cattle, sheep, and doves, as well as those involved in exchanging currencies sitting there. He made a whip from ropes and chased them all out of the temple, including the cattle and the sheep. He scattered the coins and overturned the tables of those who exchanged currency. He said to the dove sellers, "Get these things out of here. Don't make my Father's house a place of business." His disciples remembered that it is written, "Passion for your house consumes me." Then the Jewish leaders asked him, "By what authority are you doing these things? What miraculous sign will you show us?" Jesus answered, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up." The Jewish leaders replied, "It took 46 years to build this temple, and you will raise it up in 3 days?" But the temple Jesus was talking about was his body. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered what he had said, and they believed the scripture and the word that Jesus had spoken. Have any of you done any COVID shopping? Have you found yourself in the last year just buying stuff that you wouldn't have bought if you weren't stuck in your house? I know you have, right? Like buying stuff online and not. So buying stuff, so I've made up 3 categories. So COVID shopping at category 1 is things that I needed and I would have just gone to the store and purchased in normal days, but I had to get them online and maybe I didn't quite hit it right on the nail, right? So COVID shopping category number 2 is stuff that I found super cheap that I didn't need. I have, my wife will not really know about, maybe she does. I have like a teeny tiny shopping addiction. Like I'll go to Kohl's like once a month and I'll go to the 80% off rack and I'll buy something because it's $4. Like, I can spend an hour looking at the 80% off rack and just, there's that little jolt you get, right, when you get a $90 dress shirt for $4 or something, so that's... You're so proud. Then I come home and show her, yeah. So they got me a few times. And then there's that stuff that once I looked for it once on Facebook, then everybody else in the world knew that I was looking for that, and so I got targeted like, hey, look for this, don't you want that? Well, you look for one of those, when do you get one of these? So here's kind of what happened to me. So I needed to buy a new set of headphones because my new phone doesn't have a headphone jack in it. Like, what? Why? Without the dongle, which I also bought online, right? That's the thing that, so anyway, so I needed to get some wireless headphones, and I wanted a very specific kind that I could wear when I'm at the gym, not the big cans, but anyway, I found exactly what I wanted and got them, and they are exactly what I want. They're the perfect size and weight, and they work really well, and they sound reasonably well for like the $8 I spent on them. Whenever I turn them on and on, there's a very pleasant woman's voice who speaks to me in Chinese, and I have no idea what she's saying. I think she's saying, "Hey, your headphones are on now," and then I think she's saying, "Hey, I'm turning your headphones off now." Now, I do get alerts when someone calls or texts or emails or something, and then she says something else to me, and I don't know what she's saying. So it's just kind of entertaining for me that I go, well, she's kind of become my friend. So then I really wanted to buy a little odometer, speedometer for my bike. So last spring when the weather got nice and I was riding a little more than I had in past years, I got one that's really cool. It's GPS. It just like hooks up to the satellites, right? And it tracks, it can do dozens of things, how fast you're going, average speed, distance, total distance. I mean, I could figure out how many miles I've ridden in the last year, all that stuff. However, it's also not from this country, and it measures everything in kilometers. And I can't figure out how to switch it. But after a while, I prefer that because A, when I'm riding my bike, I'm just like doing math problems all the time. Like I've gotten really good at calculating anything like times 0.62. So, and it's really kind of encouraging when I forget that it's in kilometers and I look down and I go like, I'm going 50 kilometers an hour, which is really fast. And like yesterday, I rode 40 kilometers. Which is 25 miles, but 40 sounds a lot better than 25. So those are my stuff I really should have bought at the store, category 1, right? Category 2, stuff that I found super cheap that I just could not pass up. I found this really, really nice Royals t-shirt that I just love the design of. And of course, it seems really super cheap until they add shipping, and then you realize that you just paid more than you would have paid for it anywhere. But the shirt that I just absolutely adored got here and it was too small. So Melody now has a really nice Royals t-shirt that I found super cheap. I got a 2015 Royals World Series hat, right? Because that's a long time ago and they've got boxes of them somewhere, so I got that pretty cheap. I really did make a really nice purchase of some new TCU shirts in homage of Adam's alma mater, and you asked me about Duluth Trading Company? Oh my gosh, I found this like long sleeve kind of rugby heavy thing that is, fits perfect. It's like $14 or something, so there is a store in town, I could just drive over there. But so then the stuff that I kind of got targeted for, category 3, you might have your own categories, but I'm pretty pleased with all of these purchases actually. So they figured out, oh, you're like a religious guy. So guess what? I get all these ads and notifications of. So I have a baseball jersey, you know, like this other solid collar sleeve with the white, whatever we used to wear under our baseball uniforms, with a giant Disciples of Christ chalice on it, like this big, like cool. So I can represent. I've got tons of Tall Oaks camp shirts and stuff, but this is like, there is no doubt. Disciples of Christ. One I got the most recently that I really like is it says in really big letters, nah, and then the quote is Rosa Parks, and I just love that one. And then I got a shirt that quotes Micah 6, chapter, verse 8, and the shirt says, act justly, love mercy, walk humbly, and that's one of my favorite quotes. From the Old Testament, from the Bible at all, is from the prophet Micah. So, you know, as Jesus approaches the temple in Jerusalem, Passover, in the Gospel of John, here early in the Gospel, we're only in the 2nd chapter. This story is in all 4 Gospels. It appears much later in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. But early in Jesus' ministry, John tells us of this occasion. The marketplace, the selling, is not really COVID shopping, right? It's not people looking online. It's not really people looking for things that they might need or want. Jesus approaches the temple in Jerusalem and sees a situation where people are being required to purchase things that they have to be part of the religious celebration. And it's being sold to them by a monopoly of sellers here at the temple in Jerusalem. So we've been talking quite a bit about our friend King Herod the Great, who, again, not a nice guy, we don't think, extremely wealthy, was the king of the Jews with the help of the Romans. And he, in order to kind of hopefully make the people like him better than they did because they hated his guts, decided, I'll spend tons and tons of my money and I'll kind of redesign and rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. So Adam, there's a shot there. So like I said, I finally figured out the other day, this miniature of Jerusalem is at a hotel. It's in the museum in Israel now. It was at a hotel hotel in somewhere in Israel. So here's a shot of the temple itself. So this is the part of the temple that we have the exact dimensions of in the Old Testament. This is the part of the temple that was originally a tent when they were out in the wilderness, but the shape and size of everything's about the same. I guess a lot of you went out to visit when our Baptist brothers and sisters set this up out in the country somewhere. So the big tall building is the temple itself. That's where the Holy of Holies is. There's a couple of rooms inside. It's not a big place. It's not a big space. It's not the more, thousands of people don't go there inside. Just a few people do. In fact, only one person to the very back of that tall structure. So then the walls around it signify the court of the Gentiles, which I think is outside of the walls. If you're not Jewish, you don't even get to go in that far. Court of the women, court of Jewish men. The priests could get closer, the high priest could get all the way in. So that's the temple itself. That's the part that we usually think about. And something, a similar structure was there from the time of Solomon, right? It's destroyed by the Babylonians, they rebuilt it, and then Herod totally redoes it. And he not only rebuilds the temple, he builds up this whole massive structure. So if you go to the next slide. So this is what the Temple Mount looks like. And this is a big part of his building project, was building this up. And, we were there, the stones in that wall, so you're facing west. So the western wall, the place that's still exists, is on the other side. And those stones are like this, right? Massive construction stones just to get the platform up and flat. The teaching steps are on the left, I always get that backward. Your left, on the south side. So here's the temple in the middle. Here's all of this space around. I think that's called the court of the Gentiles. But notice the thing that goes around it, okay? You see the little columns and the roof that goes, I assume it's on this fourth side too, I don't know. But those are porticos. Those are covered places, and the best image I can think of is that I visited, if you go to Santa Fe, New Mexico, the area around the courthouse in Santa Fe has this covered sidewalk, and there are all the Navajo craftsmen there, right? And they're selling their stuff. Well, the porticos were built either specifically for that purpose, or they became the place where all of this commerce was happening. All of these things were being sold, and they're out of the shade, right? They can, in the heat of the desert in Jerusalem and in the summer, they can be just comfortable in there in the shade selling their stuff. So it's Passover. The week of Passover, there would have been impossible to walk in here probably, right? There have been thousands and thousands of people who have traveled from very far away to come worship at the temple. And Jesus enters the situation, and he sees not just the people who have come to worship, but those that are making profit. Because guess what? How do you think I'm surmising now that you probably just didn't walk in off the street and get one of the spots under the portico, right? Hey, I think I'll go down there and sell my stuff today. Don't you think somebody was in charge of the rent for the portico space, which probably doubled on Passover, right? So this whole thing has become a business. Go back out, Adam. Which is run by the temple authorities, or the religious authorities. So Herod is the governor, the king of the Jews as a political leadership. And then upper to the right, see that big building with the 4 towers? Those are the Romans. That's a Roman fortress. That's staff. So when Pilate comes from his nice home on the beach, on the coast, and he really doesn't want to come into Jerusalem because it's hot and smells bad and there are all these people running around, he's in there with the soldiers. So here are the Romans overlooking the business that's happening in the holiest place to the Jewish people. So what's happening there, and why is Jesus so upset? So he mentions a couple of things. First of all, he's a little kinder in John than he is in the other Gospels. He uses the word marketplace, or I think what our translation said, a place of business. In the other Gospels, he refers to it as a den of thieves. right? And if Jesus Christ Superstar, right? Everything I know about Jesus, I learned from Jesus Christ Superstar. You have made my house a den of thieves. Get out. So it's not just that the business is happening, but it's the way it's happening. So he mentions a couple of groups, 3 groups specifically, the money changers. So about, 15 or more years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I was going to teach this lesson to my youth group, my junior and middle school and high school kids on a Sunday morning. And what I did was I walked in, and even when we had 50 or 60 kids in the room, the Sunday school offering would be like $2, right? I mean, it wasn't something that they really emphasized, and it was fine. That's not why we were there. But there was usually a couple of kids whose parents gave them a $1 bill when they, got to church and said, "Be sure and give that to Kevin before you leave." So I walked in and said, "Okay, hey, I got big news from the church. We're going to start collecting Sunday school offering a little differently, and we're going to start using these tokens." So I had in my pocket like the tokens from the arcade. I said each one of these tokens is worth 25 cents. So they don't want to count money. I just made up this whole story. I mean, they fell for it. I don't know why. So, bring me up your offering, and then we'll switch them out, and we'll put them in the offering basket. So the 2 people that had $1 came up and gave me their $1, and I took the $1, put it in my pocket, and then I took 3 of the 75-cent tokens, and I put them in the offering bowl. And they were like, "Hang on, whoa, 3? I gave you $1 and you put 75 cents in the thing." And I was like, "Yeah, administration fee." Right? I mean, we can't, these tokens are not free. We got to pay for these. And then we got to, we have an account. We got to pay for, and people got really, really mad at me because they thought I was serious about it. But this is exactly what's happening in the temple of Jerusalem. So people were required to pay a temple tax. We're not quite sure exactly how often that was to be paid, whether it was an annual pay your dues thing or each time you visited, or I'm not sure. I'm not sure the historians know. We think that it was 2 small coins. 2 small coins, and very specific coins. So there's kind of a good reason for it, and then, when things start out as a good idea, and then over time they get something messed up, right? So most of the coins at the time had a picture of Caesar on. People at the church really didn't want to get paid with pictures of Caesar, so let's switch out the Roman money to money that has a symbol on it that be more agreeable to us. That makes sense. I don't mind that at all. But of course, what the money changer was doing was taking 3 small coins from you and giving you 2 back. So that's basically what the money changers were doing. So one of the little stories that gives us a hint at this is the woman, the widow, who gives her last 2 coins, and we usually brag about how generous and wonderful a woman she was. When the wealthy people who had 1 billion coins were also giving 2 small coins. And the lesson not is be generous like the widow. The lesson is don't make the widow give you her last 2 coins, right? The people who had more than 2 should give more than 2, and she shouldn't have her give. So that's what's going on with the money changers. Then we have all of this livestock. So mentions cattle and sheep and doves, which are all part of the sacrificial system, right? Part of your gift, in addition to the temple tax, part of your ritual as a Jewish person that day was to sacrifice animals, and that was part of the religious ceremony, part of the sacrificial thing of giving up something to God, but it also helped fund the temple, because if you offered a bull, a steer, a cow, well, the priests actually would have dinner that night, right? That's part of the process, is that part of that would happen. But the Old Testament law said that this animal that you sacrificed, whether it was an ox or a sheep or a lamb or a goat, a dove, it had to be unblemished. It had to be perfect because they didn't want the people like picking out the little runt of the flock, like, and giving that to God. So remember that at the time this is set up, just after they get the Ten Commandments in Sinai, they're in the wilderness for 40 years. And what are they? Well, they're nomads. Well, what do they have with them? They have sheep and goats, right? And the temple is a tent that travels around with them. It's in the camp with them. So when it's time to make your offering, you go to your herd of sheep and you pick out the best one and you walk across the road to the altar and you offer your thing. It would have worked really well. So now much time has passed, people don't, maybe they're farmers now, maybe they live in the city, maybe they're from Nazareth and it's 60 miles as the crow flies, 4 days walk from Nazareth to Galilee to Jerusalem. Are you going to carry your goat with you for 4 days? And what are the chances it's going to arrive unblemished? So you put your money in your pocket and you go to the temple and you purchase your animals that you need, that you're required to use for your religious practice. Purchase them there. And again, it's not like I went to the temple in Jerusalem and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. It's not a souvenir, it's not a knick-knack. You don't take it home with you. It's part of your religious observation. Now, were the people selling the cattle and the sheep and the doves, selling them for cost? Doubt it. Right? So this whole monopoly racket has occurred, and this is why Jesus is so upset. Plus, it's Passover. And so every family unit, every household would need a lamb for the Passover feast. And now the rules have decided that only the priests at the temple are the ones who are able to prepare the lamb, to kill it and to do it in a way that it's kosher, which is a legitimate term for how the meal was to be prepared. The only place you can get your good Passover lamb is at the temple. It's kind of like saying you can only buy your turkeys for Thanksgiving from the church. Right? So between this necessary purchase of offerings and purchase of switching your coins over, the closest thing I could imagine for what we do here on a regular basis is asking you to give me $2. Right? Well, we had to go buy the juice and the bread. It's been carefully prepared for you. Give me $2 to go home. Jesus was annoyed. So the two things that Jesus talks about kind of more than anything else, and that's money and hypocrisy. Literally more, it talks about money more than anything else, according to scholars who look at the stories and the references and how many times does he talk about this topic. What's the number one topic in Jesus' teaching? Money, as far as frequency. The rich young ruler comes to Jesus and asks, what do I need to do to enter the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God? And Jesus looks on him with love and sees him as a good person. He's following all the Jewish laws. And he says, go sell everything you have and give it to the poor and come follow me. Challenges him. Take up your cross, right, from last week. Give everything away. And he can't. He goes away. And Jesus is sad because he can't make that commitment. Jesus says in Matthew, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be loyal to the one and have contempt for the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. Jesus' most common criticism of the religious authorities is that they don't practice what they preach. They spend too much time and energy on the rituals, the laws, the practices, the administration of the faith, and not enough time and energy on the things that he thought were important: caring for the people, loving God, loving your neighbor. So Jesus is not the first one to talk about this. So my favorite bright orange t-shirt that has a quote from Micah. Micah is a prophet that lived about 700 years before Christ. He lived in Jerusalem in that area, and he was very critical of exactly the same things. 700 years earlier, according to Micah, the city, Jerusalem, was doomed because the beautification process, the buildings and things that they were doing to make the city pretty, was financed by dishonest business practices and which impoverished the people. He also rebuked Israel because of its dishonesty in the marketplace and corruption in the government. Micah, 700 years before Jesus enters the temple and sees all this stuff going on. So my t-shirt says the very end of what is one of the most lovely references in Scripture. Here's Micah 6, verses 6 through 8. He's speaking very specifically about the sacrificial system that's in place at the temple. Where do I have it? There it is. What shall I bring to the Lord, the God of heaven, when I come to worship him? Shall I bring the best calves to burn as offerings to him? Will the Lord be pleased if I bring him thousands of sheep or endless streams of olive oil? Olive oil was another form of sacrifice, of offering. Shall I offer him my firstborn child to pay for my sins? No. The Lord has told us what is good. What he requires of us is to do this, to do what is just, to show constant love, and to live in humble fellowship with our God. Like that translation. So what does the Lord require of me? Does the Lord require that I purchase a shirt with a giant symbol of the Christian church prominently displayed? Or does God ask me to live a life that shows without question that I truly am a disciple, a follower of Christ? Does the Lord ask me to order online a shirt that quotes the prophet Micah, who critiqued the financial and religious institutions of his day, or to actually follow that advice? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with my God. And what does the Lord require of you this day? Let us pray. Eternal God, we thank you for this house of prayer in which you bless your family on its pilgrimage. Help us to worship you in spirit and in truth, that our consciences may be quickened by your holiness, our minds nourished by your truth, our imaginations purified by your beauty, our hearts open to your love, our wills surrendered to your purpose. And may all this be gathered up in adoration to you, O Holy One. We pray this in the name of Christ, the one who taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. So, let's see, is it on? There we go. Yes? No? Good. Psalm 84, verse 10 says, For a day in your courts is better than 1,000 elsewhere. One of my old favorite songs. A couple of announcements as we move on through the service. Time to order Easter lilies. We're still planning on being here Easter Sunday. We're not quite sure what that's going to look like, what the schedule will be. We might, we're thinking about it really hard, so we'll let you know as soon as possible how we're going to handle Easter Sunday. There's just a couple of Lent devotional books left over there. I went out and delivered a few of those to some of our folks that are homebound, so they went to a good place. Wednesday nights we continue working our way through the Gospel of John, the movie The Gospel of John. We're up to 9 through something. I'll send out an email this week, but you're welcome to join us on Zoom. You can follow along by reading the Gospel of John a little bit each week. You can watch the movie yourself on Amazon Prime if you have that. And women's retreat coming up next weekend, I guess. There's still time to register for that. Invite you to join us in our service of communion, those of you at home as well. While they were eating, Jesus took bread. He blessed it, he broke it, and gave it to the disciples and said, "Take and eat, this is my body." He took a cup, gave thanks, and gave it to them, saying, "Drink from this, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many, so that their sins may be forgiven." What does the Lord require of us? The Lord has told us what is good. What God requires of us is to do this, to do what is just and kind, to show constant love, and to walk and live in humble fellowship with our God and with one another. That's quite a challenge for this day and all days. But we do so knowing that the grace and forgiveness and mercy of God goes along with us, strengthening us, helping us to do those things that we may find so difficult, and looking upon us in love. Go in peace this day and all days. Amen.
Only the best for my viewers.